Diana Spencer, the princess who stepped out of a fairy tale, once captivated the world with her gentle beauty, sorrowful eyes, and a heart full of compassion. When she first entered the royal family, she was seen as the perfect symbol of purity and hope. All of Britain, and indeed much of the world, believed she would live a dream life beside Prince Charles. But behind the radiant smiles and the immaculate white gown of the wedding of the century were silent days filled with loneliness and tears. It was Prince Charles's free-spirited nature and his longing for a past love that first began to fracture the royal fantasy Diana so desperately clung to. From a young woman yearning for genuine love, she was slowly drawn into a whirlwind of betrayal, media spotlight, and palace secrets. And then came that suspicious death in a Paris tunnel, abruptly ending the short life of a global icon. Yet instead of closure, it ignited a storm of unanswered questions. Diana's story, even now, is far from over. Now, decades later, King Charles breaks a silence, confirming what the world has long suspected. Stay with us as we uncover the truth behind the crown and a confession that changes everything. In the long and illustrious history of the British royal family, few monarchs have stirred as much controversy as Charles. From a young age, he stood out as someone different, far removed from the strong, stoic figure the public typically expects of a future king. Charles was never fond of the military or the rigid formalities of royal life. On the contrary, he gravitated toward the arts, poetry, architecture, and moments of romantic introspection, rather than strict discipline and rigorous training. This free-spirited nature was once described by the media as charming in a young prince. But as he inched closer to the throne, it became the very reason people began to question his capacity for leadership, though. As the Prince of Wales, Charles was often seen as weak and indecisive. He lacked the commanding presence of his father, Prince Philip, who embodied discipline and duty. Charles was easily swayed by emotion, frequently torn between royal obligations and his deep yearning to live an authentic life. He struggled with the palace's rigid rules, disliked being controlled, and even complained on several occasions about the burden of being heir to the throne. This softness was not only evident in his personality, but also deeply reflected in his private life. His marriage to Princess Diana served as a vivid illustration. Faced with the choice between a duty-bound royal marriage and a passionate love affair with Camilla, Charles was unable to make a firm decision. He wanted to maintain a pristine image in the public eye, yet he could not abandon the woman he truly loved. His hesitation and internal conflict led to years of emotional turmoil, not just for himself, but for Diana, Camilla, and their two young sons, William and Harry. Many have asked the difficult question, can a man who cannot manage his personal life, who is overly sentimental and lacks resolve, truly possess the strength to lead an institution as ancient and revered as the British monarchy? That question became even more pressing when Charles ascended the throne at the age of 73 after spending most of his life in the shadow of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II. While she stood as a symbol of stability, strictness, and unwavering dedication to duty, Charles represents a new kind of royal generation, more vulnerable, more emotional, and in many ways more human. As a young boy, he was shipped off to Gordonstoun, one of Scotland's toughest boarding schools, where his father believed the harsh environment would toughen him up. Instead, it nearly broke him. Charles was relentlessly bullied, isolated from his emotionally distant parents, and forced to navigate a world that seemed determined to crush his gentle spirit. But here's what nobody expected. That same sensitivity that made him a target would eventually make him extraordinary. When critics claimed he was too weak for military service, Charles shocked everyone by excelling beyond all expectations. He didn't just join the Royal Air Force, he dominated it. His instructors were amazed by his natural ability, his fierce determination, and his refusal to accept failure. One flight instructor later revealed that Charles had a gift that couldn't be taught, earning him the prestigious Double Diamond Trophy as the best pilot in his class. Yet, even as Charles proved his courage in the cockpit, That tender heart of his remained his greatest vulnerability. He craved love and approval he'd never received as a child, desperately seeking someone who could fill the emotional void his parents had left behind. Little did he know, this desperate need for love would lead him into the most complicated triangle in royal history. And that was just the beginning of his troubles. The meeting that changed history. Everyone thinks they know how Charles met Diana at a party thrown by Diana's sister, a chance encounter that sparked royal romance. But that's not how it really happened. The truth is far more complicated and far more tragic. Charles first laid eyes on Diana Spencer when she was just 16 years old, standing in a muddy field during a shooting party. He was immediately struck by her beauty, her vibrant energy, and her infectious laugh that seemed to light up everything around her. There was just one massive problem. Charles was already dating someone else, someone who happened to be Diana's older sister, Sarah. For months, Charles tried to forget about the young girl who had captured his attention. He focused on his relationship with Sarah, appearing at public events as the picture-perfect royal couple. But fate has a funny way of intervening when you least expect it. During another gathering at the Spencer family estate, Charles asked Diana to give him a private tour of the gallery. It was during this intimate moment, away from prying eyes and watchful sisters, that something clicked between them. The conversation flowed effortlessly. Diana's genuine interest in his thoughts, her easy laughter at his jokes, and her complete lack of intimidation by his royal status enchanted Charles in a way he'd never experienced before. For the first time in his life, he felt truly seen by someone who wasn't trying to use him or change him. But just as quickly as hope had bloomed, reality came crashing down. Sarah Spencer, perhaps sensing the connection between her boyfriend and her little sister, made a shocking public statement that would change everything. In a magazine interview that sent shockwaves through the royal family, Sarah declared that she wasn't in love with Charles and had no intention of marrying him. The relationship that everyone expected to lead to marriage was over in a single brutal sentence. What Sarah didn't realize was that her public rejection had just cleared the path for something much more dangerous and much more devastating. Because now Charles was free to pursue the girl who had haunted his thoughts since that day in the muddy field. But there was someone else who had never really left his heart. Someone whose presence would poison everything that was about to bloom. Her name was Camilla. And she was about to become the third person in a marriage that was supposed to be between two. The Camilla factor, love's greatest enemy. Here's the secret the royal family never wanted you to know. Charles and Camilla Parker Bowles were never really over. Their relationship had started years before Diana entered the picture. And despite marriages, children, and royal duties, that connection never truly died. While the world watched Charles court Diana, Camilla remained a woman who understood him completely, the one person who could make him laugh until his sides hurt and listen to his deepest fears without judgment. The signs were there from the very beginning. But Diana was too young and too in love to see them. When Charles proposed after just 6 months of dating, Diana was over the moon. She thought she had won the ultimate prize, the heart of the future king. What she didn't know was that her prince's heart was still partially owned by another woman. The first crack in Diana's fairy tale came just days before the wedding, when she discovered that Charles had ordered a special gift for Camilla, a beautiful bracelet engraved with their pet names, Gladys and Fred. Diana was devastated. Here she was, preparing for what should have been the happiest day of her life, and her future husband was buying jewelry for his ex-girlfriend. Diana's friends later revealed that she desperately wanted to call off the wedding. At that moment, she felt trapped, humiliated, and heartbroken before she'd even walked down the aisle. But the pressure was immense. Invitations had been sent to royalty around the world. Security had been arranged for hundreds of thousands of spectators, and the entire British economy was banking on the tourism boost from the royal wedding. Both families convinced Diana that she was just having pre-wedding jitters, that every bride gets nervous, that Charles's gift to Camilla was simply a polite farewell gesture. They assured her that once they were married, once Charles had his queen, Camilla would fade into the background and become nothing more than a distant memory. They couldn't have been more wrong, because what happened the night before the wedding would shatter Diana's world completely, and a devastating truth would haunt her for the rest of her life. But even that paled in comparison to what Charles would later admit to the entire world. The night before Charles's confession, picture this. It's the night before the most watched wedding in history. Diana Spencer should be glowing with happiness, surrounded by friends and family, dreaming about her future as the Princess of Wales. Instead, she's crying alone in her room, having just heard words that would echo in her heart forever. According to Diana's closest confidants, Charles visited her the evening before their wedding ceremony. What he told her in that private moment was so devastating that Diana later described it as the worst night of her life. Sources close to the princess revealed that Charles, perhaps overcome by guilt or last-minute panic, confessed that he didn't love her the way she loved him. But it gets worse. Reports suggest that Charles broke down that night, not from joy about his upcoming marriage, but from grief over leaving Camilla behind. Friends of the couple later revealed that Charles was seen crying, not tears of happiness, but tears of loss for a woman he truly loved but couldn't marry. Imagine being Diana in that moment, 20 years old, about to marry in front of the entire world, and learning that your prince's heart belongs to someone else. The cruelty of the timing was devastating. Too late to cancel without international humiliation. Too early in their relationship for her to have built the emotional strength to handle such a betrayal. Diana's response was heartbreaking in its simplicity. According to those who were there, she simply asked Charles why he was going through with the marriage if he didn't love her. His answer, friends later revealed, was that duty came before personal happiness, that the monarchy needed heirs, and that love was a luxury that future kings couldn't afford. That night, Diana made a choice that would define the rest of her life. She could have run, could have caused the scandal of the century by leaving Charles at the altar. Instead, she decided to walk down that aisle, hoping against hope that she could somehow make him love her the way she loved him. It was a gamble that would cost her everything, because what happened during the ceremony itself would reveal to the entire world that something was terribly wrong with this fairy tale, and the signs were impossible to ignore. The wedding that fooled the world. July 29th, 1981 was supposed to be the happiest day of Diana's life. Instead, it became the most elaborate lie ever broadcast to 750 million people. Every smile was forced. Every gesture was calculated. And beneath the surface of royal pageantry, a tragedy was unfolding in real time. The first sign that something was wrong came during the ceremony itself. When it was time for Diana to recite her vows, she made a shocking omission that sent ripples through royal circles. She refused to promise to obey Charles, something that had never happened in a royal wedding before. It was a small act of rebellion, but those who knew her best understood it as a sign that Diana was already fighting back against a marriage that felt like a prison. Charles, meanwhile, was struggling with his own demons. During his vows, he made what many dismissed as a simple mistake, saying, "Thy goods instead of my worldly goods." But body language experts later noted that his slip revealed a subconscious resistance to fully committing to Diana. His heart, they observed, was clearly elsewhere. The most telling moment came during the famous balcony kiss. Millions of people around the world watched Charles and Diana share what they thought was a kiss of true love. But photographers who were there later revealed that the kiss was awkward, forced, and lacking any real passion. Diana leaned in eagerly while Charles seemed to pull away, creating a moment that perfectly captured the one-sided nature of their relationship. Even more heartbreaking were the moments when Diana thought no one was watching. Royal photographers captured brief instances when her smile would fade, when her eyes were filled with sadness, and when she would look at Charles with desperate longing that he never returned. She was performing the role of the happy bride while dying inside. The wedding reception was equally painful for those who knew the truth. While guests celebrated and toasted the happy couple, Diana spent much of the evening trying to catch Charles's attention, trying to connect with a man who had just become her husband but felt like a stranger. Charles, meanwhile, was described by the wedding guests as distracted and melancholy, going through the motions but clearly wishing he was somewhere else. The cruelest irony was that the world fell in love with Diana that day. Her beauty, her grace, and her apparent joy at marrying her prince made her an instant global icon. Magazine covers proclaimed it the wedding of the century, and millions of young girls around the world dreamed of having their own fairy tale romance. But the fairy tale was already over before it had truly begun. Because as Charles and Diana left for their honeymoon, the real work of pretending to be in love was just getting started, and it was about to become impossible to maintain. The marriage unravels Diana's fight. The honeymoon should have been when Charles and Diana fell deeply in love, away from the pressures of royal life and the prying eyes of the media. Instead, it became the beginning of Diana's desperate battle to save a marriage that was doomed from the start. The most telling moment came during their first joint interview as a married couple. When asked if they were in love, Diana's face lit up with genuine emotion as she declared, "Of course we are." But Charles's response would become one of the most infamous quotes in royal history. With an uncomfortable laugh and a dismissive shrug, he replied, "Whatever love means." Those four words revealed everything: Diana's complete devotion and Charles's inability to return it. Diana later confided to friends that Charles's casual dismissal of love in that moment felt like a knife to her heart. She had just publicly declared her feelings to the world, only to have her husband essentially tell millions of viewers that love was meaningless to him. It was humiliation on a global scale, and it marked the beginning of Diana's realization that she was fighting a losing battle. But Diana wasn't ready to give up. She threw herself into royal duty, becoming the most beloved member of the royal family almost overnight. She hoped that by being the perfect princess, by giving Charles the sons he needed for the succession, by supporting him in every way possible, she could somehow earn the love that seemed to come so naturally to everyone else. The breaking point came when Diana discovered that Charles had never really ended things with Camilla. Phone records, secret meetings, and intimate gifts revealed that their relationship had continued throughout Charles and Diana's courtship and into their marriage. The man Diana had pledged her life to was living a double life, and she was the last to know. Diana's confrontation with Camilla became the stuff of legend at a party where all three were present. Diana approached her husband's mistress with a directness that shocked everyone present. "I know what's going on between you and Charles," Diana said, her voice steady despite her breaking heart. "I just want you to know that." Camilla's response was devastating in its simplicity and cruelty. She looked Diana directly in the eyes and replied, "You have everything you could ever want. You have all the men in the world falling in love with you, and you have two beautiful children. What more could you want?" Those words revealed everything about how Camilla viewed Diana, not as a woman whose marriage was being destroyed, but as someone who should be grateful for what she had and stop complaining about what she didn't. It was a level of callousness that left Diana speechless and heartbroken. The final blow came when intimate phone conversations between Charles and Camilla were intercepted and leaked to the press. The world heard Charles tell another woman that he loved her, that he missed her, and that he wished he could be with her instead of fulfilling his royal duties. The conversations were so intimate and passionate that they left no doubt about where Charles's true feelings lay. Diana later described this period as the darkest time of her life. She felt completely alone, married to a man who was in love with someone else, trapped in a role that demanded she smile and wave while her world was falling apart. The woman who had captured the hearts of millions was dying inside, and no one seemed to notice or care. But Diana's pain was about to become public in a way that would change the monarchy forever. Because Charles was about to make an admission that would confirm every suspicion and break every heart that believed in their fairy tale. And the confession would come at the worst possible moment. The admission that changed everything. By the early 90s, the rumors about Charles and Camilla had become impossible to ignore. Tabloids were filled with speculation. Diana's obvious unhappiness was becoming harder to hide, and the royal family was facing a crisis of credibility. Something had to give. And in a decision that would haunt him for decades, Charles chose to tell the truth in the most public way possible. In a television interview that sent shockwaves around the world, Charles finally admitted what everyone had suspected, but no one had dared to say out loud. Yes, he had been unfaithful to Diana. Yes, he had continued his relationship with Camilla throughout his marriage. And yes, he had loved Camilla all along. The interviewer asked a question that millions of people were thinking. Did you try to be faithful and honorable to your wife when you took on the vow of marriage? Charles's response was devastating in its honesty. He admitted that he had only been faithful until it became irretrievably broken down, us both having tried. But it was what he didn't say that spoke volumes. He didn't apologize for the pain he had caused Diana. He didn't express regret for destroying their marriage. He didn't acknowledge that his actions had shattered the woman who had loved him completely and unconditionally. Instead, he presented his affair as an inevitable consequence of an unhappy marriage, as if Diana was somehow to blame for not being enough to hold his interest. Diana's response to Charles's public confession was heartbreaking. Friends revealed that she felt completely betrayed, not just by her husband's infidelity, but by his decision to humiliate her on television in front of the entire world. Charles made me feel so inadequate in every way. She confided to those closest to her. He made me feel like I wasn't good enough, like I could never be what he wanted. The confession marked the beginning of the end for Charles and Diana's marriage. Within months, they announced their separation, and the fairy tale that had captivated the world was officially over. Diana would later give her own explosive interview, revealing details about her struggles with bulimia, her suicide attempts, and her desperate loneliness within the royal family. The woman who had walked down the aisle as a shy 19-year-old kindergarten teacher had been transformed by pain and betrayal into someone who could look directly into a camera and say, "There were three of us in this marriage, so it was a bit crowded." It was the most devastating summary of a relationship that millions of people had believed in. But the story doesn't end there. Because decades later, as Charles finally achieved his lifelong dream of becoming king, he would make another admission that would put his treatment of Diana in an entirely new light. And this revelation would change how the world saw him forever. Charles's recent regrets. Now, as King Charles III sits on the throne he waited his entire life to occupy, the weight of his choices has never been heavier. Recent interviews with those closest to the king have revealed a man haunted by regret, tormented by the knowledge that his pursuit of personal happiness cost Diana everything. Close friends of Charles have revealed that he deeply regrets the pain he caused Diana and that he wishes he could have handled things differently. He knows he was selfish, one longtime confidant revealed. He knows he put his own desires above Diana's well-being, and it's something that will weigh on him for the rest of his life. The irony is almost unbearable. Charles, who was once criticized for being too emotional, too sensitive, and too weak to be king, has become a monarch who wears his heart on his sleeve. The same man who couldn't express love to his wife now openly shows affection to Camilla, whom he finally married after decades of waiting. The transformation is complete, but it came at a price that can never be repaid. Perhaps most telling is what Charles has said about Diana's legacy. In a rare moment of candor, he has acknowledged that Diana's impact on the monarchy and on the world was greater than his own. She changed how the royal family connected with people. She brought attention to causes that others ignored. And she showed that royalty could be both regal and relatable. Diana's former butler, Paul Burrell, recently revealed that Charles once told him, "I should have loved her the way she deserved to be loved." It's an admission that comes too late to matter to Diana, but it reveals a depth of regret that Charles carries with him every day. The cruelest twist of fate is that Charles and Camilla's relationship, which once seemed so scandalous and destructive, has proven to be exactly what Charles always claimed it was: true love. They are genuinely happy together, genuinely supportive of each other, and genuinely compatible in a way that Charles and Diana never were. But their happiness was built on the wreckage of Diana's dreams. And that's a fact that no amount of time can change. And as Charles looks back on his life, he must wonder what would have happened if he had been brave enough to follow his heart from the beginning. If he had married Camilla in the first place, Diana might have lived a completely different life, perhaps finding real love with someone who could return her devotion. perhaps never becoming a princess, but also never experiencing the pain that ultimately consumed her. Instead, duty and tradition demanded that Charles marry a suitable virgin bride, someone who could provide heirs and play the role of future queen. Diana Spencer fit that requirement perfectly, but she was never what Charles actually wanted. She was a sacrifice to royal expectations, a casualty of a system that put bloodlines before happiness and protocol before passion. The question that haunts Charles now, friends say, is whether he was a victim of circumstances beyond his control or the architect of a tragedy that could have been avoided. Was he wrong to marry Diana, knowing he loved someone else? Or was he wrong to fall in love with Camilla in the first place, knowing that his position would make it impossible to be with her without causing pain to others? The answer, perhaps, is that everyone was a victim in this story, Charles. Trapped by duty, Diana, deceived by love, and Camilla Puichin forced to wait decades for a happiness that came at too high a price. The only winners were the millions of people around the world who fell in love with Diana's grace, strength, and vulnerability, and who still carry her memory in their hearts today. The marriage that was supposed to be the fairy tale of the century became the cautionary tale of our time, a reminder that sometimes the greatest love stories are the ones that never get to be told, and that the price of duty can be measured in broken hearts and shattered dreams. My marriage was a bit crowded because there were three of us in it. That famous quote from Princess Diana was not just a complaint, but a heartbreaking echo from a woman trapped between royal duty and utter loneliness. Diana entered the palace with dreams of happiness, a faithful husband, and a complete family. But that dream shattered quickly when she realized that from the very beginning, Charles's heart had always belonged to another woman, Camilla. Camilla was not simply the other Tamian. She was a symbol of the deep crack between tradition and personal emotion. Her presence in the marriage of Charles and Diana wasn't just a betrayal, it was a painful reminder of Diana's helplessness in winning her husband's heart. For Camilla, perhaps, it was also the tragedy of a woman who was never allowed to love openly. Diana's life was a long struggle against inner turmoil, public scrutiny, and dreams that never came true. Yet despite all the pain, she carried herself with grace, compassion, and a heart that never stopped loving. That is why, even after her passing, she continues to live on in the hearts of millions around the world. If you too feel the sorrow in the journey of this people's princess, please subscribe to our channel and join us as we uncover the untold shadows behind the crown.